ASPI Executive Director, Justin Bassi. Justin, Anthony Albanese on his way home now. I spoke to Chris Uhlmann earlier this hour and we were reflecting that there'd be quite a buoyant mood on the Prime Minister's plane right now.
No doubt buoyant. Firstly, just my own congratulations to Japan for the first female Prime Minister. It is significant. But yes, no doubt buoyant. Probably exhausted as well after a bit of congratulations to themselves. They might actually have finally have a well-deserved rest. But Kieran, really, from the visuals to the substance, the meeting couldn't have gone any better. AUKUS didn't just survive. It was backed in, strongly backed in. We can finally move on from people saying, does it have starting point of support? The critical minerals deal, important for both nations. And the one area people have mentioned, we didn't get any movement on tariffs, well, it really shouldn't have been expected. It definitely wasn't the priority. AUKUS was the top priority, critical minerals deal, another top priority, and the Prime Minister and his team achieved them. And it was really a unifying moment. We've seen the last three Prime Ministers, Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison, all state publicly how successful and important the meeting was. And for the rest of us, a reminder that the US continues to be our #1 security ally.
Justin, it's been described as the most successful or positive bilateral that Donald Trump has had this term with any nation. And one of the optics, you spoke about the optics, the fact that he was seated, the Prime Minister, next to Donald Trump in the cabinet room between him and JD Vance, who delayed overseas travel for this, was seen as an honour in itself for Australia and the alliance. Do you read it that way?
Definitely. I think, of course, people had some nerves after seeing some of the previous meetings in the White House and how President Trump could impose a level of dominance over some of his counterparts and colleagues. But it was very close. Apart from sitting beside each other, President Trump made an effort to actually touch the Prime Minister. That was a real excellent sign of how close they are and the regard with which President Trump holds both the Prime Minister and Australia. So the whole meeting, other than a bit of spice and colour around the question relating to the ambassador, the whole meeting couldn't have been any more positive.
I'll ask you about that in a moment, the ambassador role, but in terms of, so you've got the certain levels, aren't there, in a bilateral relationship? You've got the rapport, the leadership level, you've got the sympathy between the two nations, the fact that we've fought together for 100 years, but then there's the transactional as well, and the fact that Donald Trump knows the geography.
Yeah.
He knows the geography, he knows that this is a massive continent, our continent, with many vast minerals as well.
Yeah.
So there's the strategic question, there's the transactional trade question as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think with President Trump, when we knew this from his first term, of course, it is great to have the rhetoric of Australia having been the only country to have fought side by side with the US in every major war in the last 100 years. That's great. But for President Trump, it's right, what are we doing right now and what are we doing into the future? And Australia has consistently shown that we don't just have the rhetoric of what we've done in the past, that we're always thinking, how do we protect our own interests? How do we work with the bilateral relationship and other relationships with the US, like the Quad, like AUKUS, to ensure that we are really advancing regional security? And so the President was clearly able to see, right, AUKUS is absolutely in US interests. The critical minerals deal, absolutely in the US interests, as we're trying to counter the near monopolistic dominance that China has. And again, another sign of the President prioritising our region, the Indo-Pacific, notwithstanding everything going on in the Middle East and in Europe, by his upcoming visit to APEC in Korea, of course. So the President no doubt can see, and he was explaining, that Australia, whether it be through defence spending, whether it be through our rich resources in critical minerals, we are a partner now of substance, not just rhetoric.
On Kevin Rudd, you've worked, just to refresh our viewers, you're not only the Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, but you've been senior levels in government and Foreign Minister's office. Maurice Payne, you were the Chief of Staff. You know the way that diplomacy works. What's your assessment of the Rudd position and his role in all of that and where it stands now?
I think Ambassador Rudd has done an excellent job. I travelled to the US earlier in the year. I saw firsthand how tireless his work ethic is. He has spent the entire year advocating for why AUKUS is not just in Australia's interests, but why AUKUS is in the US interests. He has led the way with the critical minerals deal over many months. So he has led his team in Washington, DC, led the Australian mission, I think, very well. I think calls for him to be recalled, Kieran, are excessive. Was there spice and colour in the meeting because of it? Yes. But really, what we saw was President Trump having a bit of a joke, imposing his dominance and then moving on. We've seen previously, Kieran, as well, where President Trump is upset, he will end meetings or he will ask people to leave the White House. Here, he didn't do any of that. The meeting was the opposite of that. And I think also important to remember, the issue of recalling ambassadors is very serious. Are we really saying that the messages that Ambassador Rudd made before he was ambassador, when he was at a think tank on Twitter or in public events about President Trump, really equate or amount to what the UK, for example, who has recently recalled their ambassador to the US, Mendelsohn, for his reported links to Epstein? There can't be an equivalence there. So what we saw was a bit of spice, but really that's how Trump does business, and we need to work with that. And I think he really does value outcomes, and the outcomes with Australia yesterday were very, very good.
And my sources tell me that it was President Trump who actually sought to bring it back up as everyone was leaving the room, that he said, he seems like a nice guy, all's forgiven. And so the fact that he wanted to mop that up himself I thought that was interesting in itself.
I think the reality is he enjoys, that's the way he does business. He wants there to be high tempo, he wants it to be animated, and it's whether he was getting stuck into journalists, he was getting stuck into a poor cameraman who hit a mirror. We also saw it, if you go all the way back to the first term in relation to Prime Minister Turnbull, he would jibe Prime Minister Turnbull about the refugee deal, but he would move on. So this is the way he does business. We can't be so sensitive that we are unable to work with the United States because of that. In fact, we can get a lot of good business done, as the Prime Minister showed yesterday.
Yeah, indeed. And for those that are watching it closely, what happened after Trump had raised it again, then Kevin Rudd walked over to him and said, "Mr. President, I'm sorry, apologise," and then it was done. Now, I want to ask you just quickly before you go, the APEC and ASEAN summits next week, they're looming as quite significant settings in themselves, because you've got Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Prime Minister and Trump maybe again to maintain a bit of momentum in their new connection.
I think it comes at a very important time. It comes at a tense time, particularly between US and China and the world. We don't know whether the meeting between President Trump and President Xi will happen. It's on again, off again. But what we've seen leading in, Kieran, is China trying to impose its dominance. They've taken a very alpha approach. They have effectively threatened the entire world by restricting exports on rare earth elements, which we use for everything we have, whether it be vehicles or military equipment. This is the lead-in, this is the context to the meeting. I think they've miscalculated because they haven't just limited it to the US, they've tried to punish the entire world. So we'll see what that meeting brings. The US and President Trump will need to continue standing up to Beijing, but Beijing is right now in the middle of trying to coerce and be aggressive against everyone. They are coercing the Netherlands in relation to a tech company. They're coercing the UK in relation to a mega embassy. We've just seen them release flares in front of one of our P8s. I don't think that there is a need for Prime Minister Albanese to meet again with President Xi, seeing as though he's just had that recent meeting in China. But if a chance comes up in the sidelines, it's a very good opportunity for Prime Minister Albanese to say that the actions that the Chinese aircraft took in front of our P8 was unacceptable to Australia.
Executive Director at ASPI, Justin Bassi, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.